Hello, and welcome to Conversations, bringing the world into your living room from the JCC of Metro Detroit's Cultural Arts Department. My name is David Silverman, and I work at the JCC of Metro Detroit. Tonight is the next installment of this ongoing series, and we hope you'll continue to join us for interesting conversations well into the future. While you're here at our YouTube channel, please subscribe, like this video, and click the notification bell so you always know when we add another new video or live virtual event. Another great way to stay up to date is through our website at culturalarts.jccdet.org. At this website, you'll find information about all of our upcoming events, festivals, and ways to join our email list and Facebook group. As a reminder, if you are watching from your computer or smart TV, you can add your comments and questions in the comment box below. You can also text questions and comments to the number that you see on your screen here. The JCC of Metro Detroit is proud to provide you with free virtual events during these challenging times, but we could really use your help. If you enjoy the program or other cultural arts presentations, please consider making a donation or becoming a cultural art patron at our website, culturalarts.jccdet.org. Your support goes directly to the Cultural Arts Department and helps us to continue to produce high-quality, innovative content. And now to our evening's event. Our host for the Conversation series is Allen Maniker. A native of Detroit, Allen graduated from the Juilliard School with a BFA in dance and went on to perform with Bat Dor of Israel and many prestigious dance companies in New York and beyond. After finishing his performing career, he returned home to earn an MD degree from Wayne State University's School of Medicine. He recently retired as chairman of neurosurgery at Mount Sinai Beth Israel's Hospital and professor of neurosurgery at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. He currently works as a docent at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and he is on the board of the Martha Hill Dance Fund, as well as the chairman of the board of Steps Beyond Foundation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Allen Maniker, and I'm going to be your host for this continuing series, Conversations. You know, sometimes there are people that you know that are just meant to be a part of your life. And for me, one of those people happens to be Carolyn Dorfman. Carolyn and I grew up together. In fact, we went to kindergarten together, and we were friends throughout our school years. For as long as I've known her, Carolyn was interested in dance. And it took me a little while to catch up because I didn't really develop my interest in dance until the junior high school and high school years. But I really credit Carolyn for being one of the people that was most influencing me in my interest in dance. We both went on to pursue careers in dance, and Carolyn and I both for many years have lived in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. Carolyn has gone on to become a choreographer of much acclaim. She has garnered international tours sponsored by the State Department of the United States and commissions in Europe as well as the United States. Her company, Carolyn Dorfman Dance, is now in its 37th season, a remarkable accomplishment. She is an in-demand lecturer, educator, and choreographer. Please join me in welcoming my dear old friend, Carolyn Dorfman. Hello.
Hi, Allen.
So nice to see you.
It's amazing to see you, truly, truly. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. How are you holding up in these crazy times?
You know, adapting, moving, grateful to be well, grateful that the people closest to me are well, although there are many people in my world who've have been impacted by COVID-19 health-wise, in addition to all the other factors. So I think I survive and am doing well because I'm of gratitude, to be honest.
Yes. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear. So let's get right down to business.
Okay.
We grew up together in Southfield, Michigan. We went to kindergarten together. And that's where your early training in dance began. So tell me about it. Tell us about it.
Sure. I mean, I love to move. And so I started my dance training at Julie Adler's School of Dance in Oak Park, Michigan. And I studied jazz, tap, and really that was the focus, for me at that time. I had, Julie Adler, I had some wonderful teachers at the time. And so it really inspired me to just want to move and dance, and quite honestly, to teach, which was my initial real goal.
Really? So you entered dance not necessarily intending to perform?
Well, as a young child, of course, we did recitals, and I did that. I will confess, my father, Henry Dorfman, loved dancing. And so he loved that I danced, and he loved the music. And so he was really an inspiration. I will tell you that my mother also loved it, but my dad was really the push. And at about 12 years old, I said, I think I'm going to stop dancing. And he said, no. He said, no, Mamala. He said, I love that. And then when I told him I was going to school for college, he said, Mamala, you could stop now.
Well, did he have ideas of what kind of career he wanted you to pursue?
Oh, yes. My father wanted me to be a lawyer. Absolutely.
Really?
And or go into his business. But by that time, it was too late. I had been, I was a passionate dance lover, and people always ask, and I think you even asked, I do think it's an affliction. I think you can't do anything else. I think it's just by the time you realize it is your life. And
Right. So I have to share my screen for 1 second because we need to definitely look at this picture. And we have to explain that this is the senior musical at Southfield High School, Camelot, choreographed by none other than Carolyn Dorfman, right here, right? Carolyn Dorfman right here, and being held up by none other than Allen Maniker. So we have proof, Carolyn, that we actually go back at least as far as seniors, even though we know we were in kindergarten together. Was this your first piece of choreography?
It was, actually. It was my first piece of choreography, and probably the first time I was ever lifted into the air by anyone, Alan. So it was you, the first person to do that. So thank you so much teaching me. Partnering is a big part of my work, and it started with you, I guess.
Wow, and I never dropped you, did I?
No, you did not.
So, I know that after high school, we both headed up to the University of Michigan. I stayed for 1 year and headed off to New York, and you remained. And a lot of times, dancers, particularly in that era, headed to New York. Are you happy at the end that you stayed at the University of Michigan?
I am, actually. And because for graduate school, I did head to New York. I had, in a way, the best of both worlds, because for me, I really wanted a liberal arts education. I also wanted that education. And I also remember went to college wanting to teach. So I went into my degree there as a BFA major in dance with a K through 12 certification to teach. So I was able to do both simultaneously. And yes, so I think doing it all over again, I would absolutely do it the same way, particularly going on to graduate school, where I was the only person at NYU Tisch School for the Arts that had come from a BFA background. So I finished in 2 years instead of 3, and was able to kind of, and my real goal for getting my master's was also to have a full-time college teaching job, which I got in within 8 months of graduating, and taught for 5 years at Centenary College in Hackettstown, New Jersey, for their dance program. So then I just had a career choice to make about teaching was really important, but I learned actually for me, dance has always been a dialogue. Teaching has always been a dialogue. I learned that choreography was a dialogue. And so that's when it became my life. And I knew that I could continue teaching and have my professional career at the same time. And so that was, and I really also valued teaching at the university level so much that I felt that if I was going to do that as a full-time job, having a company for me was not the option.
Was not.
No, I needed to dedicate myself to the company and teaching through the company as opposed to doing them both at the same time.
I see.
Splitting that. And I had it both ways. At University of Michigan, we had teachers that were primarily dedicated to creating and working and developing students. They did some outside things, but primarily that was their goal. At NYU, almost everybody had an outside focus and did more. There were some full-time people, but a little bit more adjuncts. And it presented two different views for me. And I loved teaching, and the amount of time and energy that I put into it left not a lot of room for that professional career.
Did you have a favorite teacher up at U of M?
Well, I have a lot of respect for Elizabeth Weil Bergman, who I recently connected with, who was the chair of the department at the time, and certainly loved the Humphrey Limon technique that was there. One of my favorite and most influential sort of people at University of Michigan was Martine Pope-Poulin, who was a graduate student, a PhD student, who was both just a brilliant choreographer and a humanist. And for me, she brought together into her art, her process, and her technique, all of those elements that sort of resonated completely within my soul. So I will say she was the most influential in deciding the path, not just the what, but the how I would live my dance life and really my real life.
Interesting. So, and then after U of M, you headed off to NYU. And yeah. I wanted to back up a point that you made, because, when I moved to New York, I came to the Juilliard School, and I felt so fortunate to do that because, and I'm sure you saw it as well, many dancers come to New York and they kind of try and tackle the dance scene here, taking classes at various studios without any kind of anchor. And I was so grateful that Juilliard offered that kind of anchor to me, not only to further my technique and my training, but also to build a network, much in the same way that I imagine NYU was able to do for you. And I just want to share this here because, both of us arrived in New York City at a time that really could be considered one of the golden ages of modern and contemporary dance, and even as well as ballet, because all of these people that you see on the screen here, huge names, Martha Graham, George Balanchine, Limon, Taylor, Cunningham, Robbins, have all unfortunately passed away. But we were here in a time when they were actively creating and making new and important works. And I wondered, what did you think about that, being here in this golden era of dance?
Well, I thought it was incredible. I came to NYU from Michigan, which, my parents took me to see as many concerts as they could. The JCC of Detroit would be kind of the place where if you were going to see modern dance, Masonic Temple was where I'd go see, Rudolf Nureyev. So when I went to New York, even after being at Michigan, I felt like I was playing catch up. Like I had to go see everything because I'd be in a class with Deborah Jowett of the Village Voice teaching dance history, talking about people whose work I'd never seen. I didn't really know who they were in that context. So it was like a feast. I mean, I just would try to go see as much as I could. And it was so available in so many different kinds of theaters, up close, personal, St. Mark's Church, or going to, I was seeing more things at the Second Avenue. Was it Second Avenue? What was the theater on Second Avenue? Oh my goodness. Well, I'm forgetting at the moment, but there was a major theater that dance was at. You'd go see, Elio Pomare, or you see, Jennifer Muller, or, all these companies. So I felt it was this really a really enriched time to be there because dance was so well supported and there was so much dance that it was thrilling to take class. Although we were so immersed in graduate school with dance, it was really after that you could begin to sort of more go off. Or
it was thrilling, and at the same time, it really gave you an understanding of what you're up against if you wanted to do this as a profession. You know, what the technical, because really, until you're actually here immersed in this city that is so grounded in dance, you don't quite grasp the technical levels that are present here and the creativity behind the choreography and the companies that you're seeing. To really, I can't agree with you more. To see it on a daily, continuing basis was really, really very special.
I think it also helps you to make choices about what matters to you as an artist. I mean, I think that it's to me, the most important thing about being, when I see work, is the authenticity of it to that creator. I mean, I'm very interested in not, I was really interested in seeing how different companies functioned, how artists were treated or not, you know, well or not, what the environments were. I will never forget, you know, and Larry Rhodes, you know, going to his ballet class, and he would walk around and shake hands and welcome every single person in that class at the beginning of class. Could be 20 people, could be 40 people. To this day, I do that. To this day, I do not walk into a class I'm teaching without going and introducing myself. And literally, okay, with COVID, we're not shaking hands anymore. But I mean, it was really, so there are things that I learned and there are some things I said, no, I can't participate in that either. I mean, that's something that and this was part of those reasons why I made the choices I did. Many of them were philosophical about what dance was to me and what I wanted to create with it.
Well, so when did the idea that you thought you wanted to have your own company come about? Was that during your time in New York or before? Or?
No, it was definitely during my time in New York. But you have to realize, and I suspect this is true, I'm going to tell a secret to people because I think now I hear a lot of young artists who just graduate and go, I want to have my own company. I never said those words. Here's what happened. I wanted to make work. That's what I would say. I want to make work. So how do you make work? Well, you have to get a group of dancers together who are willing to work together. And one of my dearest friends, Barbara Haley, who's been at Tulane now for many years, and I started just to create, you know, we would work together, we'd gather dancers, and we would do a concert, you know, right? And we said, okay, this is great. Carolyn Dorfman, Barbara Haley, and dancers, and not really thinking about it as a company, but this was creating work. And then you realize that now I have a full-time teaching job, so I'm doing this at night and on the weekends. And I said, someone says, you know, if you incorporate, it'll be tax deductible, the money that you put into your company. So it can be tax deductible. And you go, okay, you know, that's a good idea. I'll incorporate, not having a clue what that means. That now there's a legal entity. You apply to be a 501c3. Now you have a fiduciary responsibility. I mean, it's like you become, you know, you have to do public good, which of course has always been my goal. So that's not a problem. But suddenly your desire to make work, through that desire, you form an entity. And now the entity has a responsibility. And now that you are an entity, you have to have goals and plans, and you have to raise money you can keep doing what you do, and so on and so on. So if you had told me then that, and now it's 38 years later, that I would have a company of dancers generally on salary, except this year for 32 to 35 weeks a year, and you know, an associate artistic director and a rehearsal director and 3 full-time staff members. I mean, I would have said you're crazy, you know, and a wonderful, you know, board of trustees. So, you know, that wasn't how it started.
Right.
But I did know I wanted to make work, and I wanted to create an environment and a process for people to work in that was humane, that valued the individual, existing in relation to community. Like, I knew that. Those goals have I read back to my stuff I have from Michigan, which is kind of interesting, some handwritten stuff because I don't handwrite anymore. And I go, you've evolved in many ways, but your fundamental life principles and artistic principles really have never changed.
Right. Wonderful. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I really don't think that many people, and in some regards, nor should they just need to be the audience sitting out there enjoying it. I think many people don't realize exactly the amount of work that's required to keep a company going. Not only, and you as the director wear so many hats. You're not only the choreographer, but you're the financial person to a certain extent. You're the shoulder to cry on. You're the organizer. It's enormous, the amount of responsibility the director of a company takes on.
Well, Alan, I am also blessed, and I also recognized early. By being in New Jersey as an entity, being a corporation in New Jersey, we were there when Thomas Kean, the governor, totally believed in the arts and made a massive investment. So my company benefited. Every 5 years when I was going to quit, something big happened. And one of them, in the 5th year of my company, it was development grants, 3-year development grants that were diminishing. At that time, 1986, 30,000, 20,000, 10,000 to hire an administrative director. So literally since 1986, I have had an administrative partner. I now have a phenomenal executive director. So, I still, we are partners in all that we do. So I have tremendous responsibility, but I am not completely the person, I don't manage the business side of the company. I participate, but I don't manage that. I manage the artistic side of the company. And so I just want to say that I was very fortunate to be in a place where I was not only able to develop as an artist, but I was able to develop as an organization and be supported by the state.
How wonderful. So I want to share my screen again so that we can actually have a look at what it is that you're doing, because it's so beautiful. Such exciting work, Carolyn. So wonderful to see. So talk to us, tell us about the creative process, the inspiration. Does it start with a piece of music, a music phrase, an interesting idea? Where does it start for you?
I would say 95% of the time I am starting with an idea or a concept. It's I certainly can be inspired by music, and I certainly have been creating music to pieces to music by Patsy Cline, to Celtic music by John Whelan. But mostly I come up with a concept and idea, and I'm inspired by the world around me. From, as I often say, the intimacy of the duet to global issues. I'm interested in the human story. I'm really a storyteller, and I am looking at the world in that way, and things will kind of ruminate a little bit. They're always coming back, and I go there. Sometimes it's really like you'll see in that video, the dance with hula hoops. I had the dancers over, and my husband surprised us with hula hoops, and I'd come off making almost 5 years of working with Bente Kahan on work that really spoke to my Jewish legacy and the Holocaust. And I needed a break, and I said, and they started running around like hooping them on their necks and doing all that. And I said, there's a dance in this. There's a fantasy dance in this, which is so not my nature. But I do, love that notion of life in its full spectrum, which is really why I chose modern dance, because being a child of survivors, I wanted that both from the joy and love and life to also the things that make us question humanity. So it was that range that has always interested me. But I would say the majority of my work is really, I've been very fortunate to receive funding for commission scores. And that's because the concept comes first. And then I work with my dancers, as I said, in dialogue. I don't work alone in the studio ever. It's just not who I am. So I have an idea, I come in, I may show them a movement, I may teach them something, and then I watch where they go. I feel like oftentimes a molder of moving clay. And I think creating almost kind of visual symphony. To me, that's what choreography is. It's really a visual symphony, a movement symphony, if you will. And then adding, of course, the sound, which creates that.
And what happens if you get stuck?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I did. I was one of the pieces we showed. It was a piece called Cocoon, and I had 20 hours of rehearsal to finish the ending, which was only about 4 minutes, not even. And I literally was sitting in the studio, and the dancers could tell I was struggling, and I felt like I was in a Fellini movie, because I'd sit there and they'd all come to me with ideas, right? And I felt like, oh my God. And so I'm lucky to have an associate artistic director. She was a dancer at the time, and she said, okay, we know where you are. Where do you really want to go? Like, what is your goal? And the minute I started talking to her out loud about it, I knew instantly the next day, and literally in less than an hour, I finished it. So, it's interesting. Sometimes I have to, when I get stuck about going forward, I have to go backwards, and I have to sort of see the trajectory, because I am really interested in creating a journey. I create an arc in a concert, but in a piece, I want to, when you finally have that ending moment, even if it's a question, somehow we should know it's the end. We should know that we've arrived somewhere, or that we're still on a journey somewhere, or that it's been interrupted. So that's what happens when I get stuck. I usually see where I am. I go back, I see the threads, and then it's somehow by the discussion, again, the conversation, I think I can find my way forward.
Wonderful. So, you are known for your work with Jewish themes. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? How did that come about, and things such as that?
Sure. I will tell you that for a lot of my career, it's been a blessing and a curse, just to be honest, because you can get identified and pegged for something, and pegged it. And now I'll tell about that evolution. But I didn't start out to make work. I started out to make work about the human story. I was interested in people, period. But these works percolated over time. You know, as a child of Holocaust survivors, I was the youngest in my family of 3 children. My mother had 2 sisters, so between them, they all lived in Detroit. You know, Rosa Schomburg, Franka Charlupski, and my mother, Mala Dorfman, and their husbands, Henry Dorfman, Alan Charlupski, and Uncle Julius Schomburg. And so we grew up together. So like 7 siblings, but I was the youngest. And I heard the stories, I think, at the youngest age. And the whole concept of the Holocaust, my family, my parents' experience, would I have survived, the nightmares I had about those things, the dreams about people I didn't know, that I never met, the idea that even though it was my grandmother who died, she was really in her 30s, you know, when she went to the gas chambers. So these things like lived in me, and all of a sudden I would feel the need. I remember hearing after the Munich, the killing of the Israeli team in Munich, an album called Journal October Stuttgart by David, and a song by David Darling from that album that was just cello. And it was the most moving. I mean, if I were an instrument, I would be a cello, Alan. That's just the truth. So this just seared to my soul, and I said, I have to make a piece. So that was Cries of the Children, 1983, the first time I ever made a piece dealing with my Jewish legacy, history, family story. And then over time, you know, my family was instrumental in the first Holocaust Memorial Center in Detroit. And I was, we even performed this piece, Cries of the Children, at I think one of the anniversary dinners. And I was sitting there, I was 3/4 of the way into making, in 1986, making a piece called Lifeline. And as I was sitting there, they were talking about in Jewish culture, this idea of Lador Vador, you know, from one generation to the next in this continuum. And here's a piece that moves only, it's like watching a scroll from, you know, audience left to stage to audience right, or as we would know it as stage right to stage left. And I was 3/4 of the middle of making this piece that looked like it had no Jewish content. And I went, oh my goodness, this is a piece about my parents talking about our interconnectedness, that we are individuals, in particularly in the Jewish community, but it extended, in their view to the world, of individuals who exist in relation. And so you have, the piece ends with this rope. It's like a harness that literally supports all 8 dancers, kind of leaning into it. And I began to so I learned then that it took me till last year to really say this out loud. All my work is Jewish, but the content isn't always Jewish. But where it comes from, its philosophies, its ideals, that matter to me, that are the most important things to me, are in the work. My process, how I work with people, all of those things come out of that philosophy. But these works percolated over time, sometimes years apart. You know, every few years something would emerge. In terms of that, but I never made a conscious effort. And really, it wasn't until I had Ken Maldonado as a booking representative said, I really think we should like package this work. People, I think we should call it the Legacy Project. We should take this work because it's so culturally important. And that didn't work so well, actually. It was, and partly because I think people thought, well, who wants to see work about Jewish people? I don't know exactly, but that's what my father said once, but yet that has actually proven to be untrue. That actually,
well, on that note, let's look at a piece about Jewish people.
Yes.
This is an excerpt of your work, Mein Menschen, and correct me if I'm wrong, but loosely translated into My People.
Mm-hmm.
And let me share it with you now. It was a depiction of clearly a Jewish wedding ceremony, complete with the canopy, which is called the chuppah, and the bride and groom there, and it kind of morphs into a much more darker picture towards the end. Yeah.
But I think, one of the images at the end of that, you hear Frank London, very famous, jazz musician, blowing the shofar. As my mother told me, when she was 15 years old, the Germans came and her world turned upside down, and everything sort of begins to go into a surreal slow motion, and it really is the call to warning in that way. But that was really an arranged marriage. It's called The Arrangement, and it's really dealing with knowing and not knowing, sort of, the person you're going to marry until you get underneath the chuppah, and the table becomes, as you're right, the table becomes the chuppah in that way.
Right. So, but now here we are in a brand new era, an unfortunate one. But recently you did a lovely, wonderful virtual piece with the theater in Sarajevo. Can you tell us about how that evolved? And
yeah, so my two, not my most recent premiere, Snap Crackle Pop, but the two works before that, I collaborated with a composer, Svetlana Bukvic, who is originally from Sarajevo in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and left at the age of 18 on the bottom of a bus when the war broke out in the early 90s, and came to this country. And so those two works brought us on two different occasions to perform, one at the Winter Festival in Sarajevo, and then again the following year, 2 years later, in a collaboration, but with the State Department supporting us to come back and not only perform in the opera house there, but then to do a multi-city tour, also doing educational programming that was built to build bridges between various different communities there. And so we were able to get grants to bring 5 of the ballet dancers to the United States for a week to both learn a work, to be part of a work we were performing, and to tour and to sort of do that. And then we performed with them. So we had a deep relationship with Belma Chekhov, who is there now, the ballet choreographer there. She was the director of the ballet for a while, and now, so we talked to each other, and she said, we should just do something. I said, let's do it. I said, you know what? We brought our companies together. The process was even almost more important, Alan, than the product, because this is this is March and April, the worst of times for them and for us, certainly in the New York, New Jersey area. That was the worst COVID lockdowns for us, and really beginning to adapt. So we spent, about 4 or 5 days of rehearsal over a period of time with them. We broke dancers through Zoom from their company and ours. We broke them into rooms so that they could really have really in-depth conversations about how they were feeling, what they were doing. Belma and I gave them direction, but it really came of them. And there was something to be creating, to be sharing with other artists who really understood who you are, what you do, and why this was so difficult. To have a personal outlet was so important for the artists. And then we would look at footage, and Madeline Moore, who is our company manager, worked with me on the editing, and we kind of again built a journey of this work. And it was really an affirmation of connection, an affirmation across the world of people caring about each other, and for artists to really express during a time when their voices were not able to be heard as they typically are heard, in the context of their careers being shut down, and finding another voice for them.
It's an interesting voice. Virtual work still doesn't replace the thrill of being live in a theater. Mm-hmm. And, my hat's off to, and my great praises to all the artists that have tried to further that medium and that work, but mm-hmm. still every one of us, I think, longs for the day to be back in a live theater because there's nothing like it.
There is absolutely nothing like it. And I think that's why these formats, even like why I think you and I like Zoom or these processes where you can have real conversations and not just taping something and putting it up,
Right.
It's because that's what we're used to, is that, choreography is choreography, but the moment it is on stage, it is fresh and it is responsive and it is, basically could be altered by any of life's experiences on that stage, and the audience and their interactions. And so all of those worlds that collide to create performance are what make it rich and live. So
yeah. Well, so we all hope for the same things. So let's talk briefly for a minute about your teaching. Are you teaching virtually right now?
Yes, I will say that we never stopped working, the company, through March, April, May, June. We were fortunate to get PPP so we could keep dancers working. And I created during that time. We taught classes. We taught free classes really all the way through July.
All virtual. All virtual.
All virtual and interactive and responsive. We also had many contracts from school districts, and all of them, not performance, of course, but all of the teaching contracts they wanted our virtual content. So we were, whether it was from providing content for every fifth grade student in East Brunswick, New Jersey, to setting work in, pre-professional high school programs or university programs, we were able to complete all our contracts. And in fact, I am blown away and thrilled to tell you that they're continuing next year, that they will be virtual as in 90% of the cases right now. And because the content is important, and so it's really quite wonderful, and it's all been virtual yet responsive.
Right. Were all the dancers in your company involved in it?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
How many dancers do you have?
There are 10 dancers in the company.
Wow, that's wonderful.
4 men and 6 women.
What do you look for in a dancer?
Well, I look for many things. I think technique, the ability to express with your body in and for your body to be clear, strong, facile, working in alignment, in a clarity, is really important. I call that technique, really understanding what this instrument does, and that you can use your instrument at will, and that you control your instrument, it doesn't control you. And so technique, that process of training the instrument is really important to me. But then there's this human being who plays this instrument, just like a musician who plays their instrument, and they bring nuance and life and depth and breadth and musicality and character and or life experience to it. And I am very interested in the person who plays the instrument. And then I am looking for people who have a deep commitment to something, and people outside of themselves. So that's that existing in relationship context, where I can tell that through my work requires a lot of interweaving, partnering, really kind of even the piece you saw, Had, with the wheel, that's a piece that the idea of individual balancing community is essential, and in fact dangerous if somebody doesn't stay present to the group. So those are the things I look for in an audition. I can see that. I can see their instrument, I can see their creative self, and I can see their commitment to working in an ensemble and a community. So those are the essential ingredients for me. And that's
always such an interesting idea, because I feel that as well. Now, watching from the audience, you can always tell a dancer that's present and one that's dialing it in, It really, it reads so clearly.
There's also something about a company that trains together, a company that does class together. I can tell you, we go lots of places where lots of companies go, and the tech crew or the director will say, you're one of the few companies that does company class before every
Right.
performance. I go, really? I mean, it's sort of, how do we build a kind of common, like, I find the paradox, honestly, that the more committed you are to the clarity of movement, I'm very center driven, so the center driven context, the more you are committed to the whole, the more your own uniqueness shines. When you have 10 soloists up there, it just looks like a mess. You can't really concentrate. But when there's a clarity of movement, you can take the time to see Allen Maniker, or and to see what they bring to it, as opposed to just trying to get the noise to quiet down.
Yeah. So 2 last questions as we kind of wrap it up.
Okay.
Does the artistic director of Carolyn Dorfman Dance in their 38th season have anything to say to the choreographer of Camelot?
Just, I guess, thank you. Really, I guess, thank you. Thank you for taking that risk. Thank you for showing me that I could lead, but that I could lead, without being a dictator, that I could lead with an open mind and an open heart. So I'd say thank you for giving me the chance.
Lovely. So I'm going to leave you with one last thing.
Okay.
The great Martha Graham once said, "People have asked me why I choose to be a dancer. I did not choose. I was chosen to be a dancer. And with that, you live all your life." Did she get it right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's always an interesting question, because when you get older, people, so when are you going to retire? And I go, to do what? Something I love? I don't know, but I think it's in your DNA. It's who you are. And I guess it came through my dad.
I'm so thrilled that you have come here tonight to talk with me, to share your experience. We get to reminisce a little bit as well. I mean, it's not often you get to say you've known someone for as long as we have known each other, and it's really just been a pleasure. Let me just ask if there are any questions. I see one. Is the work developed with the Sarajevo company available on your website?
Yes. And it's called Alone Together. And so I think it's also available on YouTube, but it's called Alone Together. But I'm pretty sure it's on the website. So,
David Silverman, is there anything further we need to do to announce other than say goodnight to all? And thank you so much for joining us. We've had a lovely time here. So good night to everyone, and thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and a big thank you to our guests this evening. Our next conversation piece will be on September 10th, and will feature the Dean of the Juilliard Dance Division, Alicia Greff-Mack. We hope you'll join us for this as well. You can find details on our website, culturalarts.jccdet.org. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to make sure you never miss another event. Thank you again to our guests, and thank you for joining us. Have a great night.